Hey everybody, Alex Kazor, SteelersDepot.com, back to do another initial analysis and recap of the Steelers' wild 2016 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. They moved to 7-2-1 on the season, now riding a 6-game win streak, and this one certainly came in unconventional fashion, and for about 95% of the game did not look like anything remotely resembling a victory, but Steelers find a way to get the victory, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that the Steelers team, and we've seen it in the past, just has this resiliency to it, this mental toughness, and this never say die attitude that's really special and unique. And I think it starts with the coaching and the culture. People say Tomlin's lost the locker room. I mean, you can point to games like this. You can point to games in the past, like the Colts game last year, where they had to mount a furious comeback and hit a Boswell game winner to take that one. And say that when you have those moments and you have those outcomes, when you have the strong coaching and great leadership on the field that comes from, I think, Ben Roethlisberger and Cam Hayward, that's how you keep the room together, and that's how you create that kind of real tight knit unit that gets you through these games. When you're on a 6-game win streak, which is rare in itself, Steelers have done it now for 2 years straight, though. Generally speaking, not all the games are going to be just super easy victories. It's just hard to win one game in the NFL, let alone 6 and then 6 in a row. So unless you're like the undefeated Patriots or maybe the occasional, Rams Chiefs teams that we've seen this year, you're going to have some close games. It's just kind of how it goes. But when you can look back at the games in your own history, like I said, the Colts game last year and other ones that I'm sure I'm forgetting, because Steelers had so many wild games last year, and you can kind of take from those moments and say, hey guys, we've been down this road before. Let's just get it together, get back to our roots, follow our game plan, and we'll get back into this game. We've seen that even in losses, like the Jacksonville loss last year to Kansas City week 2. Again, those were losses, but you're able to pull from them and say, we're not going to quit. We've seen this story before. We know we're capable of getting back into it. Let's just play our game, and it's going to happen. And it has. And I think, as Ben said after the game, that's going to be good for down the road as well. So if the situation arises again, and you're down in a game, you can pull from this game now and say, hey guys, remember this Jacksonville game when we were down? We came back, we won that one, we can do it again. So it creates that belief and that trust in one another that I think is rare in the NFL, with all free agency and a lot of locker rooms that can be in chaos, and just not having that strong leadership that spans more than just 1 year. That's just now, decade, and you go back into the Rooney, the history of that, and how the Steelers dynasty was created. It was with that strong, steady leadership of the Rooneys, of Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher, and now to Mike Tomlin. And the other important part of this game was, getting the victory in general, because this back half of the schedule is going to be so tough. You're at Denver Sunday, who's coming off a win. You have the Chargers, I think, after that. Week 15, Week 16 are New England and New Orleans, and then Week 17 against the Bengals. So it's really nice to have those wins in your back pocket. So if you hit a stumbling block somewhere along the way, you have that breathing room. You have a little bit of margin for error, to keep your advantage in the AFC North, and hopefully for playoff seeding overall. So really important to get this victory on multiple fronts. And, start with the offense in this one. I mean, it was objectively terrible, and that runs really solely through Ben Roethlisberger. It's hard to blame, James Conner or Antonio Brown or Juju Smith-Schuster if Ben can't make a play, and he was struggling, forcing the ball into double coverage, missing open receivers, and just really playing as bad as he's played in any one game this year. And so as he goes, the offense goes. The third down offense was in the tank. They were 1 for 9 at their worst before they finally got their act together real late in that game and hit 2 for 2, I think, in the fourth quarter. And so there was just no way this offense was being able to get into a groove. And I think the other compounding factor was not only that the offense wasn't putting up points, it was just that they couldn't even get drives going. So you had the one sequence in the first half where Jacksonville went on a 15-play drive, gets a field goal. Steelers go 3 and out, give the ball right back. Defense tired, is back out on the field. I think Jacksonville went 6 plays, kicked the field goal, and then Ben throws a pick on the first play of the ensuing drive, and I think Jacksonville ended up with like another 9-play drive. So just no time of possession. You're putting out tired legs constantly. I mean, this defense couldn't get a chance to catch their breath, and that compounded that problem and created that domino effect of why the defense had their issues in the first half and throughout. Really the first half. By the second half, things started to calm down. So that was another, factor and another effect of the offense not being able to move the football. I mean, they just couldn't even get a drive going just to get the defense some rest and their ability to kind of look at some of the plays and regroup and things like that. You can't even go back and just do some tape study and look at the pictures if your offense is going 3-and-out and throwing a pick on the first play. So why is that an issue? Why does Ben struggle against Jacksonville? I mean, I think they play a lot of man coverage. They have good answers for how to take away Antonio Brown, and they just have really elite talent in the secondary that most teams don't have. So they make every throw a competitive one. The receivers have great hands, great ball skills. Jalen Ramsey's 2 picks today were fantastic. So they're a challenge for most teams, but when they're playing fundamentally sound, they did not play sound against the Colts last week, blew a lot of coverages. You knew that wasn't going to happen 2 times in a row. This defense is too good for that. And so that's why you had those issues. But you just start hitting your stride. You start playing well because you have to play well because everything's on the line. And Ben said after the game that that catch, a back shoulder catch by Juju with about a little less than 4 minutes left in the game on Jalen Ramsey was kind of the jump start to this offense that it needed. Now, they did hit the Antonio Brown 78-yard touchdown earlier, which was a big play, kind of a broken play where AB just found space. He's so good at that. But it was that catch by Juju that put them, I think, around the 25-yard line and set up the Vance touchdown, which now makes it a 1-possession game, and now you have real life and you're right back into this thing. So Juju's going to turn, I think, 22 on Thursday, and it's just crazy to watch his development. And I've said it a lot, but I think it's another example of it. His physical toughness is great, but his mental toughness, I think, is even better because it's tough for a young guy to be uninvolved early in a game. We see Antonio Brown, who's 30, get super frustrated if he's not getting the ball early. I think Juju had two catches for 16 yards at halftime, so really no one was getting the football because the offense couldn't move. So for a young guy to kind of stay in the right mindset like that, and then when called upon, make some high degree of difficulty catches, the back shoulder throw against Ramsey, then against AJ Boye, the double move on the eventual game-winning drive, making a skying up for a pass for whatever that game was, I think 35 yards. Really just big kind of moment plays like that where it was a little slow start, had kind of a semi-drop early in that one, but that mental toughness is really rare for a lot of players in general, but much less just about 22-year-old receivers. So dude's a star, obviously, and just a ton of fun to watch, and I just love seeing that mental toughness and making some big plays when you had AB that was covered outside of that one blown assignment or that one scramble drill that resulted in a long touchdown. The offensive line, I thought, did well enough. It's a tough, Jacksonville front. Their run defense is better than some of the aggregate numbers suggest. I thought the protection was held up, mostly well. 2 sacks today for Ben. That's a bad day for the offensive line, so that tells you how good their starting 5 has been. But yeah, he just made the plays when he had to, and Ben did the same. Those throws to Juju were really well-placed footballs. Hit James Conner for what should have been, the then game-winning touchdown with like 50 seconds left, and it didn't happen, but that was a great read and a great play and a great extension of the play by Ben. So, just clutch players making clutch plays. It's the old replacements. Was that Coach McGinty saying that, winners always want the ball. And, that's what Ben did, and he made the play when it counted. And then the touchdown to win it, I'll have an article going up somewhere around the same time as this video for Steelers Depot. That was obviously a busted play. It's supposed to be either a shovel to Vance or maybe hit the flat to James Conner or Antonio Brown, and all those options were taken away. So Ben didn't have any other option but just decided to take it himself and gets around Miles Jack and bounces off Matt Filer, who's trying to overlay out of the way, and just, by about a foot, if that, crosses the goal line. But that's Ben making a play when there's just no play to be made, and so that was a really cool moment as well to cap it all off. So the offense obviously was the bigger factor of why this team got behind, but ultimately when it counted, they got their butt in gear, and that's all that really matters. Defensively, again, it was the same story, not a whole lot to explore there that we haven't talked about in literally any Jacksonville game before. Jacksonville has clear and clean identity offensively. They're going to run the football. They're going to come out with two backfield sets. They're going to hit you in the mouth. And getting Leonard Fournette back last week kind of got his feet wet in a struggling game against the Colts. I think helped them for this week. And they established that run game. They were being able to run a little bit of read option, but a lot of it was just kind of power, lead strong with a fullback involved. The tight ends did their job, and just able to extend those plays with the run game. You missed the Stephon Tuitt to a degree. I thought Alualu started the game well, but you go on these big 10-15 play drives, your defensive line depth gets tested because you're basically short a guy and short a guy of Tuitt's caliber, so you're rotating more. You're getting guys like Walton in the game. McCullers was playing. McCullers started actually because they wanted Hargrave to play in nickel and sub packages because he's the better pass rusher than Alualu and obviously McCullers to replace Tuitt. So you don't want Hargrave playing every single down, so you had McCullers in base and Hargrave in sub, and he walked away with 2 sacks today, nearly had a third. So that's the reason there. But your defensive line depth is tested. Guys are getting tired. You're rotating. And Jacksonville just kind of really, pounded the rock. And that's nothing new from them. You just have to be physical enough to try to stop it. Keith Butler tried a lot of things to slow it down. He ran their over front, which they hadn't run at all this year. Literally, they ran that one play this year, and they tried to do that to some varying degrees of success. They tried some inside linebacker blitzes, which is not a new thing for Keith Butler, but those were getting picked up really well. Tony Romo was pointing them out, all the time on the broadcast. But finally, the one change that really seemed to work was, and this isn't new for Pittsburgh, and Tomlin didn't call it an adjustment, but it kind of sort of is. When Jacksonville went with some 3 tight end sets or 22 personnel with 2 backs and 2 tight ends, they would replace the corner, be Cody Sensabaugh, with Jordan Dangerfield. So they'd be running with a big base defense. They'd have 3 safeties and 1 corner in the game instead of 2 safeties and 2 corners. And that seemed to help. It created some run stops and really made Jacksonville go 3 and out. I think their last 4 possessions, I believe, and got some huge stops late that they absolutely had to have to keep that game still a game. None bigger than the 3rd and 5 stop that Vince Williams had on, was that Fournette or Yeldon? I don't remember, but it was I guess it was maybe a read option play, maybe not, but Dupree crashed it on the back, and Vince Williams worked off the block and stood the back up at the line of scrimmage, and that, forced Jacksonville to punt and give Pittsburgh the ball back, and they score, and that's the game there. But the defense really stepped up late, and even early in the game when they were getting gashed, they were getting enough stops to force Jacksonville to hold them to 3 points and make it a comeback kind of game. If you get down, 21-0, 24-0, you're not coming back from that. But if you can make it a 16-0 kind of game, you've got enough stops to allow your offense, if they can hit their groove, to be able to come back. So hats off to this defense, because that's a really tough game. You're getting hit in the mouth. You're trying to just hang on and do everything you can to wait for your offense to catch up and play their game. But the defense certainly was the better half of this game throughout, and then made the critical stops late that made that comeback possible. So Vince Williams played well. Cam Hayward, got his sacks. Javon Hargrave gets 2 sacks. DJ Watt gets some pressure. So, really nice job there in a tough game against an offense and identity that you don't see very often, and a team that just has the confidence to beat you. And it nearly happened, but then it didn't, and that's all that really matters. So I think that's really all the thoughts I have. Special teams was, fairly nondescript. A couple penalties. Switzer, I thought, just again good possession of the football. Being able to make some of those plays in tight areas. Not an issue with ball security. Jordan Berry's punts were fine. Some of the return yardage was a little, too much for my taste, but we'll have to see what happened there. But not a penalized game for Pittsburgh, and that's the other factor as well. I think 3 penalties on the day, and Jacksonville had 6. 15-yard personal foul penalties alone. So that was another, critical reason why Pittsburgh was able to stay in this game, not beat themselves enough in that regard in the penalty department, which has been an issue for most of the season. But now the last 2 weeks, I think they have 4 total penalties, which is a really strong number and a big difference from where they were at for the first, 9 games of the season, or 8 games of the season, whatever it is. So have rambled enough. Offense did enough to come back. Defense was able to hang in there long enough to give the offense the ability to come back and still get the victory. Go to 7-2-1 in the AFC North. The Bengals lost to Baltimore, so now each of those teams are 5-5, which is good news for Pittsburgh. Rather have Baltimore win that one than Cincy win and go to 6-4. So let those teams kind of just keep themselves in the middle as the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to win and create some more space in the AFC North. So I got Denver at 425, I believe, on Sunday. Won't be an easy game. They got an explosive run game with Philip Lindsay. They do enough splash in the pass game. They got a great pass rush with Von Miller and was it Chubb that's there and Shaq Barrett, so and some corners that have some really high pedigrees and Chris Harris and others. So be a big challenge for sure, but happy you get the victory today, and however you can get the victory is just kind of my mindset, and certainly glad that it happened. So let me know your thoughts on this game, where this defense is at, now in the future. What kind of confidence do you have in this defense for when they match up against, say, the Chargers and the Patriots and the Saints, who hung $1 billion on the Eagles today? How well, I know it's a question that will change by the time we actually get to those matchups, but how well will this defense play in those situations? How much confidence do you have in this unit right now? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that. So, again, let me know your thoughts on whatever about this game you want to know or share below, whether you're watching on YouTube, Steelers Depot, or follow me on Twitter at Alex_Kazor. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.